SECfans.com, Week 10, Auburn and Texas A&M, doing a little bonus content. We did 3 videos on Monday. This will come out after our Notre Dame Northwestern preview bonus content we're doing this week. We're working hard for y'all this week. And A&M and Auburn aren't teams, especially Auburn, that we've been able to discuss a whole lot lately. And we wanted to at least run the numbers and let you guys sort of see what the numbers say about this game, because even though these two teams have, I said earlier, stubbed their toe a little bit, this is an important game. It's an important game in the SEC. It's an important game for these two programs going forward. So we wanted to give it a little bit of airtime at least. And we will be discussing both these teams in broader previews later on in the season. But Josh, why don't you set this up, talk about the model, and go ahead and give your score prediction, and maybe I'll chime in the end and give you mine.
So, as he said, we wanted to chime in a little bit. We haven't been able to do as many Auburn videos in this Texas A&M game. It's interesting for a number of reasons. It's interesting because it's generally been a big matchup. It's kind of gone unexpectedly, repeatedly the past few years. On the other hand, we've had people that wanted us to do more of these videos or do more SEC videos. The past couple of weeks, a lot of teams have been on bye or actually been playing, kind of cupcake opponents, gearing up for rivalry games. We haven't had as many important games to cover. And we also, frankly, haven't had as much time, especially given how long we've spent on some other videos that have been for very, very big games. But,
And I was in India for 2
yeah, I mean, a big part of this was the problem that Daniel was in India for 2 full weeks himself. So, shout out to David Porter in comments, giving us a hard time, probably a little bit deserved for not doing this model. But be known that we'd already ran it. We just didn't have time to record it. We're trying to get to it tonight. So without further
ado, we're giving you a shout out, but we didn't do this just because you gave us hell in the comments.
No, we already had this model run, and we were hoping to do it Sunday night. We prioritized based off the size of game, which is what we usually try to do. We're trying to get as many people as we can that want to watch it. But we still really wanted to do this game, which is why we made a point of it. Kind of getting straight into the model this week. I think Auburn and Texas A&M, the biggest takeaway is that both of these teams have good rush defenses. Auburn has had a good defense and a good pass defense, but they've gotten exposed a little bit over the course of the year. I'm going to touch on that in a minute. But I did think the model was kind of interesting in the result. So just in terms of percentages allowed, right? So one of the main intermediary statistics that our model uses is your rush statistics allowed and your passing statistics allowed relative to your opponents and what they average. Auburn is allowing teams 81% of their rushing average and 91% of their passing average. 81% of the rush average is a good, very good number. You can very easily get that below 80%, in any sort of top 15 rush defense generally will. It's just a lot easier to stop the run. It's much harder to stop the pass, but 91% is not a great number. We often talk about that 95% really ought to be viewed as average because there's enough cupcakes in the schedule, or you play enough teams that also play cupcakes so their averages are inflated. It's not hard to get this number below 95%. In the flip side, Texas A&M is very much sort of boom or bust. 68% of rushing averages, 116% of passing averages. So they're a truly elite run defense, and they're an extremely bad pass defense. The takeaway from this is that neither team should be able to run the ball. Both teams should be able to pass the ball pretty well. It's not something we've seen from either team, especially Auburn has been very inconsistent. I'll be curious to see how Auburn kind of rebounds, because when you look at Auburn in their year, you can more or less kind of track it with how Auburn has been able to do passing the football. The Ole Miss game was the first game in a while that they passed, very successfully, 9.8 yards per attempt. We say 6.5 is usually the mark of being competent. Really, 7.5 is the point at which you start to become good. Auburn hadn't hit the 7.5 yard per attempt mark since Alabama State. And I think that was really the key to a lot of their struggles. We talked a lot this year about the fact that their inside run game hadn't been good. We've talked quite a bit about the fact that you can track Auburn's success, year in and year out by the red zone conversion percentage. This year they're scoring touchdowns 57% of the time. That number is just not great. And more importantly, I think if you look at their scoring percentage, 82%, they have last time they were 82% was 2012. And that's right the same mark they had that year. I think really all this comes down to the fact that they don't have a great inside run game, and their whole offense is very much inside out. So if they don't have the inside run, then that doesn't make the linebackers stay inside, so they're able to play the sweep game and the screen game a lot better. And if you don't have that, then you don't get the safeties distracted and you lose the vertical shots they have. They don't have a sophisticated downfield passing offense. And what I mean by that is, NFL style route concepts and passing trees where you're using the routes themselves to leverage one-on-one coverage down the field or to create separation due to depth in reads where, corners have conflicts in coverage. The conflicts Auburn wants to create, or conflicts in terms of your safety's responsibility, run pass, RPO concepts, that kind of thing. That only works if you're scared of the run. Anyway, based off all this, what it's saying is Auburn's going to run the ball for 2.5 yards per carry, pass the ball for 8.25 yards per attempt. Texas A&M's only expected to run it for 3.1 yards per carry and only expected to pass for 7 yards per attempt. That comes out to dead even in total yardage per play. 4.95 yards per play for Auburn, 4.94 for Texas A&M, down to 100th of a point in terms of yardage. Now, when you project that for each team, based off what it's taken for them to produce to be able to score, in that not only, it's based off, it's individual to each team, and it's an individual model for each team. So it's, partly it's looking for yardage, but it does factor in things like turnovers, how you handle field position, all that stuff kind of comes into play. The scoring model for Auburn with that yardage comes out to 22 points. The scoring model for Texas A&M only comes out to 18 points. So even though A&M is a team that we're very high on, even though Texas A&M has been a very good team, and even though Auburn has really struggled, the model is suggesting, and it doesn't look at recency, so it's looking the entirety of the season. So it's not pinging A&M any more for Mississippi State than any other game, that Auburn should actually win this game. And the reason for that is pretty simple. Auburn has not been able to pass at any point this year. And I think one of the big takeaways from the Mississippi State game was just how bad, frankly, Texas A&M's pass defense really has been this year. It really 116%. It's just really bad, y'all. We don't see numbers that bad very often. Auburn's passing offense has generally struggled. They came on a little bit against Ole Miss. They were able to put up, 31 points in that game, I think it was. And it just, it comes down to the fact that Auburn should be able to pass this ball a lot more in this game than they have been, even if they can't run it, which they really haven't been able to do very well in most any game this year. It still thinks they're going to have success because they can pass the ball. Now, sort of two things I want to hit on here. One is hitting on pass defense for both teams. So this is kind of your fun statistic in a short video. I dug up recruiting rankings for the two secondaries, and I was kind of curious what the talent level was, because I had the impression that wasn't necessarily fantastic. Texas A&M has, if you look at starting five, in current era to football, I think nickel package is usually people's predominant defensive package. A&M starts 4 3-star players and 1 4-star player. Or excuse me, 3 3-star players and 2 4-star players. I can't read my own writing. Oliver and Tucker are the only 4 stars. Tucker is the only top 250 player. He was 165th in the nation. If you want to be a high-end defense in the SEC, you need real players on the in the secondary. You need athletes, not just guys with length or anything else. You just need overall good players with a high-end talent that have the size and speed necessarily, the size and speed you need to be able to stay in coverage. One of the big things I've seen personally watching Texas A&M this year, particularly like you watch, Caper Smith or Renfro. I think, Oliver off and on has done a good job or not. But Renfro in particular, he's not fast enough. And there was a play in the Mississippi State game where Guidry catches the ball. It was a third down conversion that kind of broke the game open on a long pass. Renfro got torched by a big receiver. Torched. And I think the problem for Texas A&M is there's, you can talk about scheme, you can talk about, coaching guys up and technique, but at a certain level, if you don't have speed, you're dead. And Texas A&M in the secondary doesn't have speed. Now, in the defensive line, there's some studs there. The most fronts would be more than happy to have Dalen Mack. Kingsley Kiki's a pretty darn good player in his own right. The linebackers are pretty solid. Otara Alaka is a pretty talented kid. But that secondary is not talented. And it's really, if you don't have top 250 players in the secondary, you're not going to be able to do very well, particularly if you don't have fast guys. And I say this is interesting because Auburn actually has the same problem. Auburn has 2 3-star players in their secondary, Thomas and Denson, and then Igbenogany, Dean and Davis are all 4-star players. But what's interesting is none of the 5 is a top 250 recruit. So I think Auburn has been smarter in a lot of ways that they, whereas A&M has multiple 6'2" players, Renfro is the example I gave. Auburn has shorter athletes, but they made sure they were fast. A&M's getting torched because they don't have the speed to stay with a lot of receivers in the conference. Auburn has the speed and just basic sort of hip flexibility, guys that can get in position. They run a sound scheme. They have the guys in pace to make a play. Where Auburn has really struggled, in my opinion, has been playing the ball. And you saw that in the Tennessee game. And the thing I wanted to point out is if you look at the recruiting rankings, if you've got guys that are this fast and athletic, the question is, well, why weren't they a top 250 player? The reason is they didn't have great ball skills in high school. This shouldn't be a shocking thing. Auburn's done a good job training these guys up, getting them in position, but you can't teach length, and you often can't teach ball skills, the ability to turn to a ball, turn to look for a ball in the air. It's something Auburn struggled with. So I think for both these teams, it's a really to me, it's a really curious matchup. Can Auburn exploit the fact that A&M's guys aren't very fast? If they have time to throw, Auburn has some really darn fast receivers. Like Schwartz is an absolute track star. And so if Auburn is able to get those guys, lined up man on man and able to execute the throw, with consistency, they're going to be able to burn Texas A&M more likely than not. And the flip side is that Texas A&M has been more than willing to take sort of risky downfield throws and play for jump balls with Kellen Mond and their receivers. I think they've taken a major step back since losing Osborne, but they're still a good receiving core that can still make plays on the ball. Try it now. I take all this and I said the model says Auburn 22, Texas A&M 18. And I know it's a little bit of a monologue, but that's just kind of what we're going for, trying to do bonus content on a work night for the two of us. Personally, looking at this matchup, I think the real X factor is the fact that Auburn is not going to be able to run the ball in this game. And I say that because if you look at Auburn's statistics, what were the games they couldn't run it, at all? We're projecting right now 2.5 yards per carry. I think some people may sort of laugh at that. Texas A&M is a phenomenal run defense, and Mississippi State is a really good run defense in the conference. And obviously Auburn struggled in that game quite a bit, but Texas A&M's right there with them in terms of our sort of model and how it looks at things. So, when they couldn't run the ball against Southern Miss, they won in an ugly game 24-13. They couldn't run the ball at Arkansas. They won 34-3 despite being outgained in a really weird game, but that was kind of because Arkansas is Arkansas. Couldn't run against Tennessee very well. They lost. Couldn't run against Mississippi State. And they could run against Ole Miss, and all of a sudden that Ole Miss game is the first game where all of a sudden they can pass the ball, right? So personally, looking at it and the way it all plays out, I think you can marry the run and the pass really closely for Auburn. When they can't run the ball, they can't pass it. I think Texas A&M, with a quarterback being as mobile as he is, they're able to sort of create offense in different ways because there's always a threat for the running quarterback to be able to scramble. It keeps the safeties in, limits how you play defense. Texas A&M is probably not going to at any point have to commit another safety to the box. And as much as their back seven struggled, they struggled against Mississippi State because Mississippi State has a really good rushing attack. And it's not that they did poorly in that game, but 4.6 yards per carry meant Texas A&M was having to really play the run. They were having to be aggressive. They couldn't really back the safeties off. Don't think that's going to happen in this game. They're going to be able to give their secondary a lot of safety help. That's going to limit the opportunities Auburn has offensively. I don't think Auburn's going to be able to run the ball because very few teams have to any success against Texas A&M. And as we've talked about, up until last week, Texas A&M has scored between 20 and 26 points in every game except their FCS game. Every FBS game until last week, they scored somewhere between 20 and 26. Didn't matter if they were playing Clemson and Alabama or if they were playing South Carolina. So I think they get their 20 to 26 against Auburn. I think Auburn maybe does a little bit worse. So I'm going to predict this game actually comes out 24-17, Texas A&M over Auburn. It will not shock me if Auburn wins this game. I think some people may be surprised. I think our model is right in saying this game is a lot closer than maybe some realize, and that Auburn is being really probably underappreciated, both due to matchups and the fact that, Auburn's lost 3 games, but they've lost 3 games. 2 of them were to ranked teams in LSU and Mississippi State. A third game was a game against Tennessee, a Tennessee team that seems to be rapidly improving. And that's, I say 24-17 Texas A&M, but it wouldn't shock me if Auburn wins.
I think that part of your sticking with A&M is maybe a little bit of you wanting to hang on to your early season predictions and being so high on A&M, but after seeing that Mississippi State game, unfortunately, I'm kind of off the A&M bandwagon. We said after the 3 games in a row of Arkansas and Kentucky and whoever else it was like a 3-pack of games where they scored those 20 to 24 points. I said, at what point do you start holding them to the standard that we say, if you consistently underperform against crappy units, defensive units, or crappy teams, that's who you are? And you said you were getting close. Are you there yet now? Or it sounds like 24 points against Auburn, you're not there yet now.
Well, 24 points against Auburn, Tennessee put up 30. Mississippi State put up 23. I don't think it's unreasonable. And I don't say this to be harsh. A lot of it is I don't think Auburn's a great team. Frankly, I think Mississippi State right now is probably a significantly better team than Auburn. It's pretty fair to say when Mississippi State beat Auburn by 2 touchdowns. So for me to say that this is a 1-score game, like 4 or 5 weeks ago, I would have had A&M by a few scores. And I'm not there anymore. I think this is a very tight game. I think Auburn tends to flail, be very inconsistent if they can't run the ball. Like they almost find a way to lose under Malzahn if they can't run it. I don't know if he panics or if he kind of loses his mind a little bit. That's the only real reason I'm picking Texas A&M to win this game. But I'm totally with you. The confidence I had in A&M earlier in the year, unfortunately, is shot. And the reason for that's pretty simple. It's, Texas A&M has lost the ability to pass the ball with any consistency. Kellen Mond going for 5 yards per attempt against Mississippi State. And Mississippi State does not have a great secondary. They really don't. They have a good pass rush. They don't have a great secondary. Was troubling to the point of being disturbing. And, at this point, I really, maybe they'll rebound, but I've got real concerns that the last few games aren't a fluke and that A&M's just going to struggle to have consistent scoring in any game the rest of the season.
So I think we tend to overreact to inconsistencies with Auburn. We did it last year when they lost early to LSU. We did it this year, and the Tennessee game is not a good mark, but I do think Tennessee's improving. I want to take Auburn in this game. I think it's going to be more high scoring. I'm going to go 27-24, so the same 24 for A&M. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go 27-17 Auburn. 27-17. I don't A&M, I've lost faith in that offense, and it's unfortunate because Mond has such flashes of talent. He showed me this against Mississippi State too, where he would throw a great intermediate pass into tight coverage, and it was beautiful. And then he missed that easy touchdown, that bomb to Rodgers, that all he had to do was lay it out there. And he shows that there's times where he doesn't have touch. There's times where he's wildly inconsistent. He'll throw routes that are really low probability of completion. And I think that teams have figured out the run thing a little bit, which was a huge boon for him offensively early in the season. 27-17 Auburn. You got anything else on this game?
I think the one thing I would add, as we talked about that 20 to 26 points, I think there's actually an explanation for it, which is exactly what you were talking about. Mon has flashes of elite talent and flashes of real lack of touch or lack of understanding in the offense. And what that means is in a game, he's going to hit 4 or 5 passes that are going to put you in a really good situation and give you the ability to score. And in most of the rest of the game, he's not going to be very effective. And so it's like against anybody, those 4 or 5 passes get you 20 points or 26 points. And then the rest of the game, he doesn't score against anybody, no matter how bad you are. So they always in this same range where they get, 2 or 3 touchdowns off the 2 or 3 good drives where he has it together, where he can score against Clemson or whoever. And then the rest of the game, even against teams that, aren't nearly as good defensively, when they're playing a South Carolina, or Kentucky, whose secondary is great, he can't really keep it together. So I don't know. That's my one thing. And then I guess, the flip side is maybe Mississippi State is not allowed 6 yards per attempt September. So it may be that Mississippi State's pass defense was just a lot better than we think, and that team may just be improving back to the top 10 caliber they were supposed to be preseason. Maybe that's an overreaction, but I don't think so. It's too much of a trend, and I think we're on the same page there.
I think the inconsistencies with Mon also show up in the fact that they put up a lot of yards and not a lot of points, which is kind of what you were saying just a second ago, especially with the Kentucky game. Put up a lot of yards. They held the ball for a long time in that game, and they had 14 points at the end of regulation. So I want to be higher on Mon because he has all the tools at his disposal. And I think he did some things against Alabama last year and this year because he didn't feel the pressure to win. I think he knew that game they were going to lose. And so maybe he won't feel the pressure against Auburn. I think he will, 27-17. All right, y'all. This was a quick one, but I'm glad we got the discussion in. Both of these teams these are good fan bases. And they've been with us for 3 years now. They deserve their due, even in weekends when they're not really the feature game. So I'm glad we got it in. Thanks so much, y'all. Please make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know your score predictions in the comments section below. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great week, and God bless.